right person for the job. If you own a home, you know how much work it can take. Whether it's everyday maintenance and repairs or making dream projects a reality, it can be hard just to know where to start. But now all you need to do is Angie them and find a skilled local pro who will deliver the quality and expertise you need. Angie has over 20 years of home service experience, and they've combined it with new tools to simplify the whole process. Bring them your project online or with the Angie app, answer a few questions, and Angie can handle the rest from start to finish, or help you compare quotes from multiple pros and connect instantly, which means you can take care of just about any home project in just a few taps.
Alex?
Because when it comes to getting the most out of your home...
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, I have
Angie, download the free Angie
I'm already up,
today,
just so that you know,
Angie.com.
on Facebook. I did it so that I can
Stephanie Miller.
I mean, all these pathetic
do
Johnny
some
come
other
latelys
things,
like
okay?
Chris Christie and this, oh my God.
Okay.
Mike Pence.
All right, so
it's like,
you don't have
are
to,
so
you know, you
weak.
can
The whole party is
bring
now
the
warning,
pastor
right?
up when
Mike
you
Pence I
need
stood
to.
up with the
All
rule of
right.
law. Oh, shut up.
Thank you so much.
Chris Christie's on.
Yeah, sure thing.
He didn't do anything that he promised to. He didn't do any of this. You were prepping him for debates with Biden, Chris Christie, so you were still on board until he gave you COVID and almost got you killed.
Stephanie Miller. Weekday mornings, 8 to 11 on WCPT 820.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got a video of my cat.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting and driving. Seems kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley. What to expect as former President Trump makes his first court appearance today in the case charging him with mishandling secret government documents.
We've never seen anything like this in the history of the judicial system and process.
Trump is the first ex-president who faced federal charges, and while former federal prosecutor David Weinstein says it's historically unprecedented, today will also be legally underwhelming.
Things are not as exciting inside the courtroom, often as much as we think that they are, certainly not the way they're portrayed on TV.
Trump is trying to undermine the case and wants backers to protest at the Miami courthouse. Patrick Decker was waiting at Trump's Doral Golf Club.
He's all about America. He's all about our values.
Pastor?
Say they're prepared for
Hey, Santita.
How are you? Welcome home.
Anywhere from 5,000 to 50,000.
I'm good. Glad to be back.
I'm glad you're back. Safe and sound.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's
So
important.
first, the Denver Nuggets have won
So let's get together on Thursday.
Miami Heat in 5 games in the
Perfect. Okay.
Nuggets outlasted the Heat last
Never sound good.
Thank you.
5. Nuggets coach Mike
Yes, ma'am.
says they're not
Sorry,
done
you know
yet.
me. I'm trying to get these last few bits
We
down.
accomplished something that's never done before, but we have a lot of young, talented players in that locker room, and I think we just showed through 16 playoff wins what we're capable of on the biggest stage in the world.
There was a mass shooting in Denver overnight about a mile from Ball Arena where the Nuggets beat the Heat. 9 people were injured, 3 of them critically. A suspect is in custody, say police. Not clear yet whether the shooting was connected to any post-game celebrations. At least 10 people killed in Ukraine when Russian missiles hit buildings in the city of Kryvyi Rih, say officials. This is AP News. Be careful if you send personal checks through the mail. The AP's Donald Warder.
Check fraud is back in a big way. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network says banks issued about 680,000 reports of check fraud last year. That's up from 350,000 reports in 2021. And the U.S. Postal Inspection Service says in 2021, complaints of mail theft more than doubled from the previous year. Early in the pandemic, government relief checks became an attractive target for criminals. Todd Robinson of the financial data provider Argo Data says if you need to mail a check, don't place it in your residential mailbox and raise the red flag to notify the postman, because you'll be notifying criminals too. I'm Donna Warder.
Wheel of Fortune host Pat Sajak says the upcoming season will be his last as host. He announced his retirement from the game show in a tweet, saying, "Well, the time has come." He is 76. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few scattered rain showers here for today with cloudy skies, a high in the mid-60s. Winds out of the west around 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting as high as 25. Tonight, a chance for rain showers, cloudy and low near 58. Wednesday, partial sunshine develops, high of 77 degrees. Thursday, we'll have a slight chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy, high of 76. Friday, sunny, high of 76. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 57. Now your ideas don't have to wait. Now they have everything they need to come to life. Dell Technologies and Intel are creating technology that loves ideas, loves expanding your business, evolving your passions. We push what technology can do, so great ideas can happen right now. Find out how to bring your ideas to life at Dell.com. Welcome to Now.
The Takedown with Cliff Schechter.
Here's the 10 most amazing Biden successes, the ones you must know that the media will not tell you about. Number 8, poverty.
The child poverty rate in the U.S. fell by nearly half last year to 5.2%. That is the lowest level on record.
What we're looking at here is really a remarkable success story.
Republicans claim they care about kids. It seems to only be blasticides in what books they read. In reality, Democrats passed the child tax credit. What did that do? The largest decrease in childhood poverty in 1 year in American history. Say that with me again. Largest decrease in childhood poverty in 1 year in American history. And then Republicans went and ended the child tax credit and were against it all.
Hear more from Cliff at heartlandsignal.com and subscribe to his YouTube page.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Okay, Alex, how much time do we have?
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the
we have about maybe 3.5 minutes.
Okay, fantastic.
This message is
Thank you so much.
Adopt U.S. Kids, the U.S. Department
You're
of
welcome.
Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Hi, I'm Marcel Spears. Keeping our global neighborhood safe is a tough job, one made just a bit safer with the help of America's brave military dogs. These dogs, who often take the same risks and make the same sacrifices as our human warriors, keep our troops safe by sniffing out bombs and IEDs, locating enemy positions, and bringing a sense of comfort and home to an almost unimaginable circumstance. Yet, when these brave canine heroes retire, they're not always given the same treatment as our military VIPs, and are too often left overseas. American Humane
Hello,
works to bring home
Shirley.
these
How you
valiant
doing,
dogs
everybody? Let me go all the way back
reunite them
here.
with the people who mean
Dave
the most to them.
and Andre. Hey, and Susan
they
from
can enjoy
LA.
happy,
Jewel.
healthy, well-deserved
Richmond Taylor.
retirement.
How you doing, everybody?
To learn how you
Paula.
can help America's four-footed heroes, visit
Raphael.
AmericanHumane.org.
Francis. Sending you all so much love today.
Sarcoma.
Got a lot going on,
Odds are
huh?
you've never heard that word before. But for the 40 people diagnosed with sarcoma every day, it is a life-changing word. Life-changing and devastating because sarcoma is cancer. Sarcoma is a cancer of bone and soft tissue more prevalent in children than in adults. More than 6,000 people lose their lives to sarcoma each year. Treatment options for sarcoma are limited, and new therapies are desperately needed. More research and increased awareness is necessary to find a cure for a cancer that you probably didn't even know existed until now. Through awareness, advocacy, and research, the Sarcoma Foundation of America is determined to help those affected by this forgotten cancer, to bring hope to the children and adults whose lives are forever changed by a word they had never heard before. Please help us in the fight to find the cure for sarcoma. For more information on sarcoma and the work of the Sarcoma Foundation of America, please go to curesarcoma.org.
My dad served in Vietnam, the 82nd Airborne Division. He never talked about it.
1 minute.
My mom knew not to ask. So Dad buried himself in work and self-medicated and would lose his temper sometimes. Loud noises would put him on edge. it got rough. So I finally said to him, Dad, you gotta get help.
As a family member or friend,
You know, when
be
the
first to notice when a
when the
veteran
pastor's
has
on,
been
please
going
put
through
me on
changes,
mute
things
because I'm
like
going to be
withdrawing,
taping,
drinking
okay?
more,
I'm
or
going to
increased
be
anger could be a sign of a
taping.
larger health condition.
Printing. Okay.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
No problem.
One-on-one
Thank you.
and group therapy, and got some really great tools to help him manage things. And I got my dad back.
Listen to hundreds of inspiring stories at maketheconnection.net and learn how you can support the veteran.
10 seconds.
Alrighty.
Treatment works. Recovery is possible.
Stand by.
Play WCPT.
Thank you. Let's have a great show.
Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. It's a joy to be with you today. Of course, you hear my little printer going in the background, trying to get some information for you as we talk about President Trump's indictment and arrest today. He will be arrested, fingerprinted. He will not get a mugshot. I wonder if they're going to let him keep his passport, but we're going to find all of that out today as Miami prepares for violence, everybody. Violence. Will it get violent? President Trump has called upon his supporters to meet him in Miami today. Why? Because he will enter his plea in court. First American president to be indicted federally. Many felonies that could send him to prison. The charges at this point, we don't know how all of this is going to work out. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let me know what you're thinking. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking with Chip Gibbons from Defending Rights in Dissent. You know, there was a time when then President Trump, well, before he became president, that he defended WikiLeaks, and now he does not. Well, is there a tie between all of this and what's happening now? Well, perhaps. So let's talk about it, everybody. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. I want to hear your thoughts about what's happening today. I mean, do you think this is politically motivated? And most Americans do believe that the indictment of President Trump is politically motivated. Will it strengthen him? Will it weaken him? We've never been at this moment before in our history as a nation, so we need to talk about it. We need to look at the political fallout, not just in the United States, but all around the world. All around the world. Everybody's watching. And some people are siding with former President Trump, others are not. So I want to know how you line up and what it is that you see. What would it look like for a president to be convicted? That was something that Gerald Ford wanted to avoid, and that's why he pardoned Nixon. And many people felt that he sacrificed his next presidential run because of it. People were so angry with him. But he said the national nightmare needs to be over. So what do you think about this, everybody? I want you, hey, Joyce, I hope it's going to be a great show for you. We got a lot to talk about. Robert Patillo will be with us, Chip Gibbons from Defending Rights in Dissent, and you. So many of us need to talk about this today. Aaron Connolly and just a whole array of you want to know what your thoughts are today about this point in our national life and our history. So call me at 773-763-9278. I want to hear your thoughts. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Dave Dowling is already over there. Mildred, if you can, get on over to YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show. Barbara Bacon, please get on over to YouTube. And Andre and Joyce and Erica is already over there sending you all much love. So let's get to it, everybody. On the Santita Jackson Show, the Nuggets, congratulations, everybody. For the first time in their 47-year history as a club, they won the NBA championship. Good for them, 94-89 over the Miami Heat. Congratulations, Nuggets. In Chicago, we're going to have some rain today. It'll be 65 degrees. That'll be the high. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NHL, well, the Golden Knights might take it home tonight. They might take home the Stanley Cup trophy. We will see. They play the Panthers this evening. They're leading in their series 3-1. In the WNBA, once again, the Lynx and the Liberties game has been postponed. The future date will be determined. In Major League Baseball, the Brewers will be facing off against the Twins, the Pirates against the Cubs, and the White Sox against the Dodgers. It's going to be a great day in baseball. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Let me know what your thoughts are with respect to former President Trump today. He will not get a mugshot. Do you think he should get a mugshot? You let me know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278. He is in Miami now. Former President Trump will be arrested today. Arrested for the second time. He faces 37 criminal charges related to his alleged mishandling of classified documents after leaving office. He is expected to arrive at a Miami federal courthouse this afternoon, where he will surrender. His fingerprints will be taken, and he will be brought to a courtroom to hear the charges against him. He is expected to enter a plea of not guilty. More of that in just a few minutes. A body has been recovered, God rest their soul, from the wreckage of the Interstate 95 collapse in Philadelphia, where a section of the busy highway came crashing down on Sunday. You need to understand just how important it is. We have I-94 in this part of the country. We have I-95 up and down the East Coast. That is huge. As they say, it's going to take months to repair it. Secretary Pete Buttigieg will be there today. That portion of the highway collapsed after a truck carrying 1,800 gallons of gasoline crashed and burst into flames under it, according to officials. Student loan payments for tens of millions of borrowers will be due starting in October, the Department of Education clarified on Monday. The pandemic-related pause on federal student loan payments was previously set to end this summer, but the exact date remained unclear until this week. The repayment date has been extended 8 times since March of 2020, but a law passed this month to address the debt ceiling prevented the pause from being extended again. Illinois, became the first state in the United States to prohibit book bans yesterday, as several other states across the United States continue to challenge and remove certain titles from public schools and libraries. Book bans are about censorship, according to Governor J.B. Pritzker, marginalizing people, marginalizing ideas and facts. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. It is so wonderful to have Pastor Stephen Thurston with us. I'm so glad we missed you last week, but we're glad you're back with us this week.
Thank you, Santita. Glad to be back. Listen, I want to help us to understand today that it's okay to not be so helpful. I know somebody's eyes just bucked.
Mine did.
Without going somewhere. Jonathan Meade once said that sometimes the easiest way to solve a problem is to stop participating in the problem. And I don't think that I'm alone in having someone in my life whom I wish I could change. Someone I see struggling who ignores or resents any lifesavers I send their way. I can clearly see how this person contributes to their own struggles, but they remain totally unaware of it. And sometimes I just want to shake some sense into the person, and I say to myself, if only they would get their life together. Now, for many of us, this person is a relative. For others, it's a close friend or even a coworker. Santita, for me, it's often been a church member as a pastor. A lot of times, it's someone we want in our lives, even if it's painful to keep them there. But no matter who it is, it certainly isn't easy to see someone we care about struggle through life. Being in the presence of another person's pain can provoke a deeply emotional response, as sympathy and the desire to help someone in distress are naturally instinctual responses for us. Even according to Darwin, humans and animals alike take comfort in one another's company, protecting one another and defending each other against threats. I get that. It makes total sense to me. As I would have gone to the ends of the earth to see the people that I care about deeply happy, I did just about
Dr. Knight is on.
I could in certain instances to try to change them. I read books and articles. I reached out for experts' advice on how I could get them to see the light. In fact, in some instances, I became one of those experts myself. And if I'm honest with myself, it's because I was looking for a way to help the ones that I love. I've always hung on to hope that the people in my life would somehow change, that something I had overlooked would prove to be that magic bullet that would help them to live a good life and a fulfilling life. I kept buying books and reading more articles and encouraging them to go to therapy whether they wanted to or not. I reasoned, pleaded, and even led interventions in some cases. I imagined them happy and full of life. I yearned for their smiles and enthusiasm for life. I made it my life's mission to help make changes in other people's lives, fixing what was broken. Well, as you can imagine, in many instances, that never worked. When you have people in your life whom it hurts to love, the only logical solution seems like trying to help them to change. But I had to learn the long and the hard way by running into dead ends and facing many disappointments. That you can't make people change. That's the reality I had to come to. You can't make other people happy, and you can't always rescue another person. The reality is that the only person you can change is yourself. So that's what I did. I leaned in to manage my anxiety around other people's discomfort. I decided that other people's struggles and journeys were just that, their struggles and their journeys. I stopped trying to be a savior and instead decided I'd just serve as support. And it's so important to understand that you can't make somebody change, but you can inspire them to change. You can educate them towards change. You can support them in their change, but you can't force them to change just so that you can feel more comfortable around them. And maybe to somebody that sounds like giving up. Maybe that even sounds a bit uncaring. However, I didn't stop trying to be helpful to those struggling because I stopped loving them. I stopped because I saw that it wasn't working, and in some cases contributed to their problems. When I made efforts to take on other people's problems, I simply would do too much. I relieved them from a moment of their pain. However, I wasn't providing them with the space they needed to solve their own issues. If I kept jumping in to help them, they would keep relying on me instead of themselves, which wouldn't allow them to better deal with life's many difficulties on their own. And after years of doing the same thing over and over again with little results, I decided that it was time to change my approach. I was doing the very thing that I wanted to see other people stop doing. I was contributing to my own problems, and it was time to stop doing that. It was time to be happy, not only for me, but for those I cared about. It was time to be less helpful. Listen, our efforts towards helping people might be based on good intentions, but those good intentions don't always yield good results. By committing to learning what help really is, I came to understand that if I could manage my anxiety about other people's problems and invest my time thinking about the real solutions, I could change my responses and do something that was legitimately helpful. By making an effort to stop trying to be helpful, I saw many changes in my life. I no longer felt the pressure I once put on myself to be responsible for other people. I no longer made other people's struggles about myself. And through it all, I was able to foster better relationships with the people I cared about. Relationships based on reality versus fantasies of who I wished they would be. Finally, the biggest lesson I learned in all of this was that I wasn't helping anyone, but I was swooping in trying to solve everybody's problem every time without looking at the bigger picture. I understand now that when my helping is rooted in anxiety and an urge to smooth things over, it isn't coming from a genuine place. I now know that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to take my time to think things over. It's okay to throw my hands up and say, this situation really stinks right now, and it's going to be hard for a minute. And it's okay for you to do the same things too. Not every struggling person needs saving. Knowing that and accepting it might be the most helpful thing that you can do.
Amen to that. because you found that we were locked in the same cycle, two different sides of the same coin.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. Because I've been the great problem solver while not resolving my own. I've been there, done that, people. Take this advice, my brothers and sisters. Sending you so much love. Will you be on Facebook Live this Friday?
I will be on Friday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find me under my name, Stephen. That's Stephen with the PH, Stephen Thurston on Facebook Live, Friday, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time.
And then another question. When will you be preaching at New Covenant once again?
I believe the fourth Sunday in this month.
Okay, just remind us.
We'll get that schedule nailed down today. I think the fourth Sunday.
That's before the 4th of July weekend when we've got NASCAR, when everything's going to be shut down, right?
That's right. That's it.
Oh my gosh! I just realized what was happening because I live right here, so they're going to be shutting not just Lakeshore Drive down, but my street, all of it.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot, everybody. So gather up your vittles because it's going to be an interesting time. Pastor Stephen Thurston, everybody. Of course, your book is what?
Mirror Moments. You can get it on my website, StephenJThurston.com.
We love you, Pastor Thurston. Welcome home.
Thank you. Love you too.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Shanina Knighton, what do you want to talk about today? There is so much. There's so much. It's summertime. I love that Will Smith song. And yet, I think we need to be very careful right now. But what's on your mind?
Gotcha. So good morning. It's interesting, Santita. So I'm actually going to remind people that we can still use what I call old tricks on new dogs, which is going to be around the topic of hand hygiene. And specifically, as I talk about hand hygiene, I just want to remind people, I know that we like jewelry. I know that we love our hands, but we don't recognize what a conundrum it can create when we're not cleaning our jewelry thoroughly. What happens is when you have on rings, when you have on bracelets, when you have on watches, we don't pay attention to the fact that germs can live on those items. We don't realize that if you're eating food, sometimes food may become caked up in between those items. And so what occurs is people will wash their hands and not recognize that there's still germs up under their jewelry because they don't take time to clean their jewelry. Depending on how close the jewelry is, like let's say a ring to your finger, you may need a toothbrush to actually scrub up under there because washing your hands may not necessarily be enough. You also want to make sure that if you are wearing, like let's say dangling bracelets, think about how many things your bracelets come in contact with that your hands may not come in contact with, but because your bracelets are within close proximity to your hands, it's almost as if those germs are directly on your hands. And so it's very important that you are paying attention to how you clean your jewelry. I understand that, some things are fake, some things are real, so I will always tell people to make sure that you're paying attention to what kind of materials that you're putting on your jewelry. Gentle soap should not harm most jewelry, so that should be okay. I understand that sometimes, like alcohol may do so, especially depending on the coating of the jewelry just within itself. It's naturally important to be aware, of what household chemicals are doing to your jewelry as well. And we don't think about this, but if we put on, let's say, a ring, and that ring may not necessarily be real, and you're using household chemicals to clean, and you're not wearing gloves, then what can potentially happen is that you're having some of those metals, as they dissolve off of the jewelry, start to then come in contact with your hand and absorb through your skin. So it's very important that if you are wearing jewelry, make sure that you are washing your hands properly. Make sure that you're not using harmful chemicals if the jewelry is not real. And then also, just think about if you are in doubt about whether or not you're cleaning it, just take it off and clean it. It would be a lot easier. Or just take it off when you find that you're going to be somewhere in a contaminated setting, meaning that if you know that you're going to be engrossed inside of, let's say, cooking meat, and you're concerned about whether or not you're going to get all of that off after you're done cooking, just take the jewelry off so that way you can alleviate a potential problem later on.
You know, and I've lost some jewelry in this time because I always take my jewelry off, you know, in public. And I lost a beautiful ring. But, you know, trying to figure out how to get up under the, you know, the ring and all. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I don't like messy foods either. You know, like barbecue. I love it, but I don't want it to get on my hands and in my jewelry. I'm a little strange that way. You know, I don't want that, you know? Ugh.
It should be, because everything from food and fecal matter we found on rings.
Wow. Food and fecal matter. Everybody, please be careful. Think about it. Think about it. These are the things that we don't think about, which is why we need Dr. Nina. HEYDRNINA. Hey, Dr. Nina. That's her handle on social media. Her handle on social media. Hey, everybody. Follow her. And let's make her social media grow. She is absolutely brilliant and so necessary to our healthcare discussion and so many others. Everybody, let's talk about President Trump today. He will be arrested and fingerprinted. No mugshot, but he will be in court today. And the judge has disallowed cameras in the courtroom. But what do you make of all of this? I mean, we've never been here before. Never have we had a president federally indicted. Never have we had a president who could be going to prison for the rest of his life. Never have we seen, well, we have seen violent rhetoric before. I mean, and it's being amped up. What's going to happen in Miami today? What's going to happen not just in Miami, but all around the country? Don't think January 6th and this violence that's being called for, don't think it's just going to pop up the way we saw it the last time. Don't think about that. No, there are many, many, many ways this can pop up. So let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show, 773-763 WCPT. Back in just a minute. Hey, Dr. Shanina.
Hello, how are you?
Whew. Honey, I am doing well today. Just hold on, I'm off mic. I'm trying to pull some things out of my bag. I've got a lot of running around to do today. Lots and lots and lots of it. So, you know me, I carry everything just in case. It looks like I'm never going to come home. That's what my mother said. She said, what are you carrying? I said, Mom, I don't know what's, you just never know what's what. And I just, I have, it takes a lot for me to get going every day. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things that I keep together, and I got to call these people. I got to get some other things done. And so there's that. Just lightening up my bag as I speak to you. But how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain.
All right. Well, you sound
Attorney
great.
Patello's on.
Okay. Attorney Patello, how are you? You know Attorney Patello.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've got Dr. Shanina Knighton here who wants to listen to Rolling with Robert, as Dr. Knighton said. Good
morning. How are you?
Look, I always a balanced perspective for me.
Oh, honey, you never know what home Spice is gonna say. You just never know. So we love Robert Patillo. Love him. As you can hear all these things, I'm consolidating bags as we speak. Because as soon as I get off the air today, Robert, at the top of the hour, I want you to, I'm going to have Chip Gibbons from Defending Rights and Dissent. Because I wanted to tie this into, I want you to be there, I want you to stay for that. But I wanted to tie this into, Trump he was very supportive of WikiLeaks until he became president. Things changed, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's all this stuff is very interesting. All of it is. But so I wanted to bring him into the discussion because all of this rhetoric has got people very nervous. And I guess coming from the civil rights community, I'm like, honey, this is how these folks get down. Not only will they threaten to kill they will do it.
It's crazy to me that you have Republicans just figuring out that the FBI, the CIA, and the DOJ set people up. What? It can't be.
What? But you know what? You know what? God can figure some things out. You hear me? We've never been able to say this. Now they're like, I can't believe the FBI has been weaponized against me. What? I'm like, oh, okay, welcome to Dr. King land. How about that?
I told one of my listeners, one of my conservative listeners, I said, I'll make a deal with you. We will support you with this weaponization against Trump if you will support us in the release of all black political prisoners and the retroactive pardoning of everybody arrested during the
30 seconds
for protesting against the government. They get real quiet then.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean to tell me they're not going to expunge our records?
No. They want us to be outraged about Trump, but they're not outraged about Fred Hampton.
And everybody else has got a record. Everybody.
10 seconds.
I think except my baby sister.
Stand by.
You can't make this stuff up. All right, here we come. I'm coming.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Wow, who would have thought we'd be here? Well, you know, kind of sort of know Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee said, look, in November of 2020, win, lose, or draw, Trump is not going to leave office. He hasn't. He will set up a parallel White House if he actually loses the election. He has done that. And what else? Well, we're just going to have to see today. He's been indicted. He will be arrested today. He will be fingerprinted. They won't give him a mugshot. I'm wondering if they're going to allow him to keep his passport. That having been said, he is the first president in our history to be federally indicted. What does that mean? The charges against him are serious ones. And many people are making a lot of hay about the charges. Charges have not been leveled against Mike Pence or President Biden, who also had top secret documents. It's a lot. And these documents are classified, reclassified all the time. And we have watched something very interesting happen. I was just talking with Robert Patillo during the break. Robert, is very interesting. Coming from the civil rights space, you're accustomed to the weaponization of government against you. I mean, even now, in our contemporary history, the FBI spies on Black Lives Matter and progressive groups, war resistors, people who want peace, but not on this extreme right wing. They leave them alone. But now you have people on the right, the so-called right, because I think that people are more of a mix, I think, politically than anything. You now have people who are saying, I can't believe that the FBI has been used to spy on me, to lie on me, to undermine me. I said, wow, welcome to Kingland. I mean, this has been my life story. And I'm not saying that you don't have good people in the FBI, CIA, and all of that, because you do. But those agencies have been used not to keep us safe, but to undercut dissent. Even the Espionage Act was not used to trap those who've committed treason against the nation. The most treasonous actor in our history is a free man today. He's just not living in the United States, and that's Jonathan Pollard. So all the rules, what rules, Robert Patillo? Talk to me. Let's go back. What are we looking at with this or these indictments? What are we looking at? And what does it mean to have a president fingerprinted and arrested and brought into court? I mean, what's up? What's that look like?
Well, a few things. One of this is issue the weaponization of government. As you said, for our conservative friends, welcome to the 1950s and the 1960s.
And the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts. And today.
I tell my conservative friends all the time that it's not that black folks don't agree with you when it comes to this question of the weaponization of government. It's just we have a very different focus. And if the conservatives really want to do something about it, you're going to have to make a coalition. You're going to have to say, well, if you help us on supporting Trump when it comes to protecting him from the Department of Justice and the deep state, well, I'm going to need you guys to release all the black political prisoners, because there are still people who are in jail from the civil rights movement, who are in their 80s and their 90s, who were arrested for their political beliefs and ideologies, and they've never gotten justice. There's still people who retroactively have never been able to return to the United States of America. They've been exiled in Cuba. They've been exiled in Africa, in Europe for 40 or 50 years. You have the records of people who are active during the civil rights movement who have passed on, who have never been fully exonerated. So if you want to really say that you care about the weaponization of government, well, then go back through the entirety of the civil rights movement, the Cold War, and make right by those people and their families. And then I can think about caring about the raid on Mar-a-Lago. But that being said, Trump today is going to get the full treatment. So understand, Trump is still not secured local counsel in Florida. Because of that, if he isn't able to show up at court with his own local counsel, Florida-based counsel, then it will be a summary proceeding today, as in he will not take a plea. He will come in, he will be processed in. More than likely, they will not handcuff him. They won't take a mugshot because everyone knows what he looks like. But he will go through the court system. He will have the full indictment read against him. He will be given certain dates when he will need to reappear. And then this question of will the president get an ankle monitor, or will they confiscate his passport, because he is, of course, a flight risk. Very few times do you have a defendant that has their own airplane and has their own resorts in multiple continents around the world, particularly some that have no extradition laws. One that has access to the funds necessary to flee the jurisdiction. It's going to be a very interesting argument that the defense tries to make as to why Trump should have rights that other individuals just simply do not have when it comes to being criminal defendants. And it's going to be sobering, I think, for many people in his base, this idea that the candidate who ran on the slogan of lock her up, who ran on in 2020 as being the quote-unquote law and order candidate when it came to talking about Black Lives Matter protesters, will now be defended Trump, not just in New York City, which we say is a liberal judge, but now in the federal system in Florida, and we still haven't even gotten to the case of Fonnie Willis in Atlanta, not to mention the second Jack Smith investigation into January 6th. And now they're looking into the connections between Trump and those national security documents and the Saudi Arabian government. So this may be a theme of the summer. Trump might get used to going in and out of courtrooms.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Do you see any parallels between, well, it's very interesting, as you just said, Robert Patillo, for us to hear people on the right really going after the FBI, going after the CIA, going after the deep state, if you will. And quite frankly, those are entities that have made the lives of people who have really fought to make America just and fair, civil rights leaders and workers and people who have protested war, who've protested for peace. They've made their lives very difficult, if not outright impossible. You think of Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, that's what he became known as later in his life. He didn't live in the United States anymore. Many of our leaders, black freedom leaders, have been driven out of the United States. And it's not just black freedom fighters. A lot of people have been driven out of here. Think about war resistors, driven to Canada, and on and on and on and on and on. This is what we do. So this is not new. But what could be new about this at this time? Do you see the right and the left maybe even coming together? Robert Patillo?
If the right was smart, that's exactly what they would do. But they have to overcome their own addiction to white supremacy if they actually want to be able to make progress. Because if the political right was smart right now, if I was President Trump's advisor, and I'm not, and no one's going to listen to me, but this is what I would do. I would say that we want to have a comprehensive criminal justice reform legislation, so that we want to bring together the aspects of the George Floyd bill, the Tyree Nichols duty to intervene bill, that we want to put in place sentencing reform, judicial reform, but also include in that same bill are reforms to the Department of Justice, reforms to the FISA warrant system, reform to the confidential informant system that currently exists, reform to the special counsel law, which has now just become perfunctory, that everybody has a special counsel against them at all times, that you could actually merge those bills together and get a good amount of bipartisan support, particularly from black people. But they would never do that, because that would mean admitting that the blue people may have not been so prescient the entire time, and that indeed law enforcement matters not just when it's going after the president, but when it's going after everybody else also. And so anybody who's able to stick together that sort of coalition is the type of political leader they'll be able to operate within the environment that we see in America right now. But as it is currently construed, I don't see a place where you'll be able to get the extreme white supremacist on the Tommy Tupperville side of the Republican aisle, when Tommy Tupperville says what's wrong with being a white nationalist. I don't see how you're going to get them on the same page to create a political majority needed to actually reform any of these systems.
What do you think we should be looking for in Miami today? Do you think there could be violence? Do you think that the likelihood is great that there will be violence?
I don't think there'll be violence. I think that I'm in a lot of those far right-wing chat groups because I like to know what's going on. Yeah. And they have all been very cognizant of January 6th and the way that it made them look, and that they're on the lookout for COINTELPRO. They're on the lookout for FBI informants being within them, trying to spark violence, because they know that's exactly what the quote-unquote deep state wants. They want them to get violent. They want them to get rowdy. They want them to turn it.
Back up. So they are studying the civil rights movement.
Absolutely. Okay. This is what I try to tell my people who are not not steeped within the civil rights movement. The black folks in this country are the canary in the coal mine. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens to us is going to come to you. So you can either pay attention and fix it when you're dealing with it with us in our community, or you can wait for it to hit you. When it was a crack epidemic in the black community, it was all fun and games. When it's a opioid and fentanyl addiction in rural America, is not as much of this is a national emergency that we have to take care of. When we talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness in the black community, that was an issue for us for 30 years. Now it's coming to the white community, and they're not quite sure how to deal with it. We're talking about gentrification in rural areas around the country. They're now starting to complain that their rural farmland is being gentrified by white liberals who are moving in, driving up rates and pushing the people out. So in the same thing, when you're looking at what was done to black folks during the civil rights movement, they're doing the exact same thing to conservative groups now. And if they had just listened to us when we said, then we wouldn't have these problems now.
Well, fatherlessness, let's take that back to slavery, when it was illegal for us to form families. Mm-hmm. Right? I think we we have to continue to make that connection. It's like, okay, I remember the Curtis Mayfield soundtrack to Claudine, Keep Away From Me, Mr. Welfare. I mean, I get it. But there's some things that have happened to black people in the United States that are unique. And we have to continue to bring them up because, like you said, we are the canaries in the mine. And if people do not look and study what happened to us, it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. They dropped those drugs on us to stop the civil rights movement, and then to keep white people from protesting economic inequality, profound economic inequality. They dropped those drugs on working class people and numbed them out, Robert. And
absolutely.
Oh, God.
And if you don't think the criminal industrial complex is coming to a white suburb near you, if you don't think that many of the social ills that we've seen, ravaged black communities that we've been able to overcome, aren't coming to the country club near you, you're not paying attention to the cycles of history. So I think that for today, the MAGA supporters will of course be there with their flags, with their the whole Trump regalia, the whole festival comes in with them. But as far as the court proceedings goes, it's going to be a very short hearing. It's mainly going to be Donald Trump coming in, being processed, answering this question of does he have local counsel. If he has local counsel, they'll put in a plea of not guilty. He will be given a set of dates where he will need to return to court. Discovery dates will be put in place where the prosecution and the defense have to exchange information. You'll see a motions calendar more than likely put in place where they'll let them know when certain motions have to be filed and information has to be put into the court system, and then they will begin the process of preparing for trial. And this can take a year for you for everything to be ready for trial. It can take 3 years sometimes for things to be ready for trial. It just depends on what the docket is and the exigence of the case. I think because of the high-profile nature of this, they're going to put this on an expedited timeline to get this to trial by next year. And then President Trump is going to have to think of a way to try to defend himself. In a normal case, this is when you would also start plea negotiations. But it doesn't seem that President Trump's ego can take the idea of him having to take a plea in this case, and therefore it's going to be a very difficult uphill climb for him.
We're talking with Robert Patillo, WAOK, Rainbow Push. Of course, Attorney Robert Patillo will be joining us regularly in the weeks going forward and really in the time going forward. And I am so glad that you're with us today. I came across this study, disturbing it's called. 12 million American adults think violence is justified to put Trump back in the White House. What does that portend for election 2024?
I think that this means we have to be prepared and be ready because the far right-wing Trump supporters, they're apolitical. I've talked to many who don't even vote or who don't even have the right to vote. And they're some of the most intense Trump supporters. He's a cultural aspect to them. He's their last tie to what they feel being the white 1950s and that Leave It to Beaver era, where white people could say and do what they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted. They didn't have to be politically correct. They didn't have to be quote-unquote woke. And that you were putting together policies that they believe help those individuals. This is why Donald Trump in the quote-unquote America First and anti-China and anti-internationalism isolationist a part of his administration was so popular with many of those folks. And I think because of that, there's people who are willing to become an insurgency here in America, that if they do not get their way, they will, much as we saw in Northern Ireland, and we've seen in other places with politically disadvantaged groups as they see themselves, to turn to terrorism. And I think that we're going to need to invest the proper federal resources on the front end to make sure we're identifying these individuals, that we're monitoring them, and that we're ensuring that they're not able to hurt other people. Because when you listen to the rhetoric on the far right, not just from fringe groups on the internet or chat rooms, etc., but I mean from elected officials, from the Marjorie Taylor Greens and Chip Roys of the world, the Lauren Boeberts, etc., they talk about violent uprisings against this government. They talk in revolutionary terms. They talk in these ideas of reforming our Constitution. So I never take threats lightly from anybody. If somebody says, I'll kill you, they may or may not mean it, but I'm going to take you as if you mean it, just in case you do. I think that we have to take that into consideration when it comes to how we are addressing these folks going forward, because of the fear that they have. They've been pumped full of this far right-wing propaganda that your country is being stolen from you, that they're taking away your freedoms, they're taking away your rights, they're taking away your family and everything that you love and hold dear. They're destroying the nation. Now, the numbers and the statistics and everything on the ground says the exact opposite, but they believe this deeply. This is why we're seeing a rise in black people being shot, knocking on white people's doors, because these people's heads have been pumped full of this idea that these black people are coming to drag you out of your house and beat and harm you, and you have the right to, the unfettered right to shoot them when you feel endangered. That was the lesson of Kyle Rittenhouse. That was the lesson of the Mikulskis when they pulled those guns on the protesters. These people are in a very severe state of psychosis, paranoia, and fear that's being fomented by corporate forces on the far right wing, and they are willing and ready to take this.
You have a caller.
I think that all of us need to be ready and prepared for what they do when inevitably they do lose in 2024. And if there's been no work done by President Trump in particular in healing those scars within the nation, this is why traditionally we've always found it so important for people to concede the election, because that means we're putting down arms, we're ending hostilities. The 2020 election never ended, and we're seeing the stress that puts on a nation. We're now at their breaking point.
Well, and leadership can. It really does come down to what he does and how he tells his people to think. He can calm things down. I mean, I know how excited Reverend Jackson supporters were in '84 and particularly in '88, and he could have torn up the party and he could have torn up the country, quite frankly. He said to us, our legacy will not be division and destruction. It will be healing. It will be love. It will be construction. That's what we're here to do. And that is what he has. I mean, and I hope that is part of his legacy. And I think that it's not too late for former President Trump to turn this around. He needs to do that. Because you never win when you don't work in love, Robert Patillo. You always lose. You always lose. We all lose. Let me bring on Jack. You've called in. Jack, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Good morning.
Jack.
This is Jack. Nice. I've been listening, since they're like the 6:15, and I totally agree with how the government's been used against minorities in the past. Currently, it's just that listening to you guys talk for the past half an hour, it makes it seem like you're not supporting what Trump's saying, that it's a political prosecution. Mm-hmm. I just don't think this prosecution is political, but talking about it, about what happens with minorities and saying it happens all the time, mm-hmm. I just think I don't know, I just felt like it could be, I don't know if we should be talking in a way that makes it seem like it's possible that it's some kind of political prosecution.
No, stay right there, Jack. I mean, because I think that the only way that we can work through this is if we talk with one another, right? Having grown up in the civil rights movement, that is what I have known. And I've always known that some people who approach me a particular way, I wonder, are you an informant? What are you? Who are you? Because I grew up that way. And it turns out there was a man who was one of the heads of my father's security detail. And I can say his name because he came out and tried to tell his story, Howard Pointer. And he would, Jack and Robert, you've heard me tell this story before, he had a little Volkswagen Beetle, and he would drive my father around, but he was so trusted. That's how my father got around. This was in the early 70s. And into the late 70s, almost into the 80s, into the late 70s, I remember my brother was so devastated. He was watching television one day, and he found out, headline, informant sent to kill Reverend Jesse Jackson. That was like the headline on the news. So, boom, 5:00. And it announced that Howard Pointer, who was part of the Red Squad, which was part of the Chicago Police Department, had been sent to kill our father. He understood our home. He understood what time we went to school, came home, blah, blah, blah. All of that. And even now, Jack, it has been documented that the people who are tracked by the FBI are from Black Lives Matter and peace groups and they can't get their arms around the so-called far right-wing contingent because so many of them are in it. And I think that we have to be honest about that. I think that whenever you weaponize government for or against anyone, don't weaponize government. Let government protect people. But to weaponize it, stay right there. Let's talk during the break, okay? But weaponizing the government. Yeah, stay right there.
All right, thank you.
No, stay right there because I want Robert to speak to you, and because we shouldn't do that. That's an abuse of government. It's an abuse, and I take it personally because I've lived with it. But if it had not happened to me, I'd take it personally. Dr. King had migraines literally every day of the last year of his life because it was J. Edgar Hoover's mission to have him kill himself. And people in the civil rights community are not convinced today that organization was not involved in his assassination. Indeed, the only march, Jack, that Dr. King had that ended in violence was in Memphis. And the provocateur was a young black man who went to Morehouse College, Dr. King's alma mater, and this young man was affiliated with the CIA. I'm not telling you something I'm guessing. I'm telling you what I know. So just stay right there. Let's talk about it, because I think that if it happens to Donald Trump, it's wrong. If it happens to Dr. King, it's wrong. If it happens to Jesse Jackson, it's wrong. If it happens to Jerry Falwell, it's wrong. You don't use government to harass people. I don't care if it's on the right or on the left, it's wrong. It's just wrong. Stay right there.
It's happening too much.
It's happening too much. Stay right there. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Call us at 763-9278. You know, at some point you have to rise above your party. Rise above your color. Rise above your kind. Rise above. Rise up. And decide that you want this country and this world to be right. Not right, left, just right, correct. You want the government to stand up for you. You want the government to have your back, not be on your back. I don't care if you are on the right, if you're on the left. It's wrong. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. July 15th to the 19th, we'll be talking about issues just like these, just like this one and others, at the Rainbow Push International Conference. Call us at RAIN at 773-FREEDOM. Go to rainbowpush.org. Let's get involved, everybody. It's our country, and we need to save it. Back in just a minute. Jack, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I mean, you kind of touched a sweet spot for me, my sweet. I didn't want to talk. I wasn't trying to roll over you.
No, that's okay, and I totally understand where you were coming from. It's just I feel like the right could look at your show this morning and be like, look, they've been doing this all the time. It could be a political prosecution, and I think the facts in this case are so clear-cut and dry that while it's totally important to always talk about the civil rights movement and everything that's happened and is happening now, it just doesn't apply to Donald Trump's situation. I mean, it's in the same wheelhouse, but with his indictment and all the evidence the evidence we know about against him, it's just, I don't think it's political. I don't know.
Well, I think it is, but that having been said, it's just evidence. It hasn't been proved yet. And I think we still, with him,
That's another thing people forget. It's innocent until proven guilty in this country, but everyone wants to just jump on the bandwagon.
I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. I don't believe in lynch mobs. I don't care if the person is white, brown, yellow, or red. I just don't. I'm not going to participate in that. Not. Robert, why don't you speak to Jack? I'm sorry. No, Jack. What were you saying, sweetie?
I can't really hang on too much longer. It's been great talking to you guys. I'm very sorry, but I'll be listening on the radio, okay?
Okay, sweetie. Thank you for calling in, okay?
You're welcome. Have a good day.
So what do you think, Robert? I mean, I just, I don't do lynch mobs, honey. I don't do them, okay? Even if I don't like you, I don't do them. I don't do them. I don't like that. I just don't.
Very often in American politics, it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. And I think that's a thing that we have to get in our heads as Americans and as adults, this idea of object permanence. So on the one hand, is there a deep state and a national security surveillance state that exists that harasses and prosecutes people and jails people? Yes. Is Donald Trump guilty? Yes. Those two things can be both true at the same time. And we can discuss the need, while it's in the news, to reform many of these systems. The amount of information that the government has on us, the amount of surveillance of our telephone calls, of our internet traffic, of our movement, etc. These dossiers that the federal government keeps on all of us. That we should definitely have conversations about that and figure out bipartisan solutions to tamp back on the power of government. At the same time, Donald Trump's guilty. So So I think you can have both conversations
at the same time.
One limiting the other. Yeah.
You know, I agree. I agree with you. I'm like, we can have these conversations at the same time. But even then, I want the trial to play out so I can see what the evidence, what is proved and what's disproved. That's what I want to know. I mean, I want to know that. You know, I've seen. Yeah, Yeah. I'm sorry, Dwight. I'm sorry. I was about to call you Dwight. Oops. What, honey?
That's a compliment. But
yes.
I think people have to remember that indictments are meant to convict you. So don't take the indictment is written in such a way where you're supposed to sound guilty. So don't take the indictment as gospel, because if the indictment was the only thing that mattered, then we wouldn't need the trial. So it's going to be a long process. Donald Trump can be able to present his own information, and he'll be able to defend himself. Now, do I think he has good enough defenses to beat this case? No. But I do think he deserves his day in court, and we deserve to watch this system at work.
So what do you think is going to happen? I mean, do you think this is going to be, well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I mean, just let us stay out in your head.
In any logical case that was not Donald Trump, this would be a plea deal. The defense would go to the prosecution, and they would try to make a deal to avoid jail time. He would admit guilt to many of the obstruction charges. He would agree to pay a fine, to do community service, all those sorts of things, and that way he wouldn't have to be in prison. He'd be on probation for a few years. But because Donald Trump has the ego that Donald Trump has, and he cannot politically plead guilty, because for his brand, being a prisoner of the state versus being someone who copped a plea will be far more injurious to him. So we're going to see Donald Trump take this all to trial. We're perhaps next year going to see the trial of the 21st century play out in federal court, where Donald Trump will have to take the stand as a witness, where his lawyers will testify against him, where you will bring in all these other individuals who saw or had access to or helped to move these boxes. I think that if the evidence supports what the prosecution has alleged, then Donald Trump will be convicted and he will be sentenced to a jail sentence. And then at that point, he will have to depend on whoever the next president is in 2024, elected in 2024, to be in a position to pardon him. And that's a very serious question, because I don't think Mike Pence will pardon him. I don't think Chris Christie will pardon him. I don't think Ron DeSantis will pardon him. And President Trump needs to start building allies right now, so that when and if he is convicted and sentenced, he is a position to be potentially pardoned going forward. That still does not take care of the Fulton County case, where because it's a state level prosecution, not even the president of the United States can pardon you for that. And then he has to depend on Brian Kemp, who we're seeing more chatter about him jumping into the presidential race. Brian Kemp will be the only person who could pardon Trump and potentially save him for spending the remainder of his days in a federal jail cell.
Whew. Well, Chip Gibbons, into this you jump.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Thank you, Chip. I love your voice. You're like, okay. Well, good morning, good morning, students.
Yeah. Good morning.
It's a whole lot. Of course, we love having Chip Gibbons with us. We always learn so much from you. Of course, he is the policy director at Defending Rights and Dissent, and of course, you're on with Attorney Robert Patillo from the Rainbow Push Coalition and from WAOK, the iconic radio station down in Atlanta. We've been talking about this Trump indictment, but of course I wanted to tie in.
30 seconds.
Thank you. As I shared with Robert Patillo, there is a nexus with with Trump and Assange, Julian Assange, and Chelsea Manning, and even Ed Snowden. I mean, he was a supporter of WikiLeaks until he became president. And it's just interesting that, we have all of these
10 seconds.
Stories hitting at once. Stand by. Got you, Alex. Thank you so much. Stand by, everybody.
Stand by.
I'm going to have a live read, just so that you know.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, making history today in Chicago here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. President Trump will be arrested today, fingerprinted, and will have to go into the court to hear charges against him. He's the first president in our history to be federally indicted. What does that mean? What does it mean? He is saying that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the deep state, if you will, have been weaponized against him. And that has not just been a complaint. It has been proved that that did happen against the civil rights movement. It has been happening against Black Lives Matters. It has been happening. They have been weaponized against peace activists, and on and on and on. So where are we with all of this? You know, Jack is saying, and I thank you for calling in, Jack. Jack said, but I don't think they're being weaponized against Donald Trump. Now, what are your thoughts? Call me. Call us at 773-763-9278. And, you know, because it's very interesting that Donald Trump has attacked the deep state that the civil rights community has attacked and has been suspicious of and has had to fight themselves. So, there's just so much going on. And of course, these are the entities that Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden are up against. Interestingly, Ed Snowden didn't start off on the so-called left. Very, very mainstream guy, but he saw something different once he got into the system. Chelsea Manning has become a real heroine of the left, if you don't mind. And guess what? And so is Julian Assange. So let's talk about that with Chip Gibbons. But let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to these stories. What's going to happen in Miami? We do not know, everybody, but it's on and cracking down there. Former President Donald Trump will be arrested today. For the second time, he faces 37 criminal charges related to his alleged mishandling of classified documents after leaving office. He's expected to arrive at the Miami federal courthouse where he has asked his supporters to meet him. And so he will surrender, his fingerprints will be taken, and he will be brought to a courtroom to hear the charges against him. More about that in just a few minutes. A body has been recovered from the wreckage at the Interstate 95 collapse in Philadelphia, where a section of the busy highway came crashing down on Sunday. That portion of the highway collapsed after a truck carrying 8,500 gallons of gasoline crashed and burst into flames under it, according to officials. The truck driver has not been identified. Student loan payments for tens of millions of borrowers will be due starting in October, the Department of Education clarified on Monday. The pandemic-related pause on federal student loan payments was set to end this summer, and it has been moved several times, 8 times since March of 2020. But a law passed this month ended the pause. People will have to start repaying these student loan debts in October. And in Illinois, we became the first state to prohibit book bans on Monday, according to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Quote, book bans are about censorship, marginalizing people, marginalizing facts and ideas. So those are some of the headlines. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 65 degrees and rain. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, partly cloudy. The Nuggets, congratulations, for the first time in their history as a club. They are now the NBA champions, everybody. They won over the Miami Heat, 94-89. Good on them. Go, go, go. Denver Nuggets in the NHL. Will the Golden Knights take it tonight? They have the opportunity. They lead in their series against the Panthers 3-1. We will see if they will be able to secure the Stanley Cup tonight. In the WNBA, the Lynx and Liberty game has been postponed. The date of rescheduling has yet to be determined. In Major League Baseball, the Brewers will be facing off against the Twins, the Pirates will be facing off against the Cubs, and the White Sox will be facing off against the Dodgers. If you are a first-time home buyer, everybody, we want to help you to get your home. We want you to get a home. That is probably your biggest investment. It will enable you to have more mobility in this society. So if you have not owned a home in Chicago within the past 3 years, and just really even in Minneapolis, St. Paul, this is a national program. If you have not owned a home within the past 3 years, you need to call Team Hochberg. Yes, even in Minneapolis, St. Paul, you can call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. They're your trusted lender. First-time home buyers made up just 26% of the marketplace last year, down from 34% the year before, and the numbers were much higher over the past few years. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have said, you know what, these numbers are alarming. You're dropping too far, too fast. And they want to turn these numbers around by incentivizing first-time home buyers, people who have not owned a home in the past 3 years. They're offering substantially lower rates. Now, this program, and these rates can spike at any time. This program can end at any time. So you need to call Team Hochberg right now. Call them. You can go to 56david.com. Please check them out online. But call them. Let them know what your situation is. I think they can help you. If your total household income does not exceed $105,700, that is the heads of the household, do not make more than that, you might be eligible for this program. And if you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, you might be eligible for these programs. Both of these things must be true. But if you've got to call Team Hochberg in order to find out, everybody, call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Put yourself on the road to generational wealth. Homeowners beget other homeowners. That is, if you own a home, more than likely your children will own a home, and so on and so on and so forth. So go on and get things started for your kids, everybody. Get things started for you. Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. This is your opportunity to secure your future. Everybody, let's talk about Donald Trump. We've been talking about Donald Trump and his indictment and what's going to happen today in Miami. Indeed, we've been talking with attorney Robert Patillo about that. And let me, before I shift to the policy director of Defending Rights in Dissent, Chip Gibbons, family on this show. You're not just a visitor, Chip Gibbons. You are family. Robert Patillo, do you see some kind of connection between Trump, who used to love WikiLeaks, but now he knows nothing about WikiLeaks as soon as he became president, and what's happening to Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden? Do you think you see any connection?
Well, absolutely. I think that President Trump, if you notice, the thing that really set him apart in 2016 was that he ran as a populist. He ran as somebody who was part of the proletariat, even though that did not exist in reality. And because of this, he was very connected to the cultural zeitgeist, and what people were concerned with and what people were talking about. And that's why he was such a supporter of things like WikiLeaks and information being disseminated to the public. Contrast that with 2024 campaign cycle. Now it's all insular. Everything is about him. Everything is about what is going to happen to him, the government being weaponized against him, people going after him, how things will affect him. And I think this is the reason we're seeing a very different, far more angry MAGA base now, because now it's all the movement has taken on his angry personality. And this is what's so dangerous going forward, because he has turned against many of those same principles that got him elected the first time, such as opening up government. The same person who said that they were going to be the most transparent candidate ever ended up being the person who's arrested for stealing documents and hiding things and obfuscating. So I think this is a clear example of how exactly power corrupts and how power changes individuals from being kind of wide-eyed and talking about what they're going to do for the people versus now just simply trying to collect and consolidate power wherever possible.
Chip Gibbons, Policy Director, Defending Rights in Dissent. We are living in quite a moment as we watch the former President of the United States, who will be fingerprinted today and arrested and taken into court to answer charges, really that are treasonous, quite frankly. But, we're looking at Julian Assange. More people on the right and the left are calling for him to be released. Ed Snowden is in Russia. You've got Chelsea Manning. I mean, what is there a connection? I mean, what is going on right now? What can we read into this?
Well, I mean, the connection that exists is that all of these people have been indicted under the same law, which is the Espionage Act of 1917. But I think that's where it ends. I think it's important to note that while Trump, like Assange, like Snowden, like Manning, like Daniel Hale, like Dan Ellsberg has been charged under the Espionage Act, that they're accused of very different things. Those are all people who either were government insiders and gave information to the media because they wanted to alert the media and the public through the media about some sort of wrongdoing. In Dan Ellsberg's case, it's war crimes, or it's the Vietnam War. In Chelsea Manning's case, it's also war crimes again, and it seems to be the theme here. In this time in Iraq and Afghanistan, Snowden, its surveillance. With Assange and WikiLeaks, they released a bunch of information. But beyond that, I don't really think you can draw a comparison between the type of behavior they engaged in. It's worth pointing out that Donald Trump has had a number of views on this subject throughout his life. You mentioned that he said, "I love WikiLeaks" in 2016. He loved WikiLeaks in 2016 when he was running for president and they released information about Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Prior to that, Donald Trump was very hostile to people who gave classified information to the media. He said that Edward Snowden was a spy who should be executed. He talked in very dramatic terms about Chelsea Manning, and I think Assange too. And once he came into office, he was very much the pre-running for election Trump, right? It was his administration that was the first administration to indict a journalist under the Espionage Act, Julian Assange. His administration indicted a number of whistleblowers under the Espionage Act, including Reality Winner, a former NSA contractor in Georgia, who gave a document about the election that I believe is now public to The Intercept. Terry Albury, who was the only black FBI agent in the Minneapolis field office, who was very concerned with the racism within the FBI against Muslim Americans, who was very concerned with the abuses of the war on terror at home. He was indicted and imprisoned under Trump for getting documents. And then Daniel Hale, who was a drone whistleblower who had his home raided in 2014 under the Obama administration, but for reasons no one can quite explain, he was never indicted at the time. And then 5 years later, in 2019, 2020, the Trump DOJ comes in and indicts him. And the other thing that Donald Trump did that is quite interesting is that he increased the penalty for the mishandling of classified information charge. People might remember that David Petraeus, he was a former general, and he gave classified information, highly classified information, to his biographer, who he was also having a romantic relationship with, and that he ended up, unlike Snowden, unlike Chelsea Manning, unlike these other people who are whistleblowers and faced long prison sentences, he gave information to his biographer and received probation, 2 years of probation under a misdemeanor mishandling of classified information statute. Donald Trump changed the mishandling of information statute from a misdemeanor to a felony. It now carries 5 years in prison. And, the thing about the Espionage Act that he's accused under is that it has sort of different elements to it. I mean, all criminal charges, you have different elements, and the government has to prove each one of them beyond a reasonable doubt. The first part of what he's charged with is that he, retained national defense information, and that seems pretty clear based on all those boxes they seized. The second part is what you call the intent level, and the intent for the Espionage Act is someone had reason to believe that the information might cause harm to national security, and that's interpreted in a really broad and troubling way. But with Donald Trump reading the 41-page indictment, it seems like most of the element of harm that he had reason to believe this would cause some type of harm is his own statements, because he would not stop talking about how bad it was to leak classified information, how bad it was to mishandle classified information. So you have this man, and I've never read an indictment where somebody's own words just continuously come back to haunt them, right? I mean, he's on tape allegedly for this indictment, showing off these documents, saying this is secret, this is classified, this is confidential, I'm not allowed to show you. And his defense was on television. We'll see if he tries this in a court of law. I declassified this. But what does he say on the tape? It's classified, and I can't declassify it. I'm no longer president. The issue of classification here is really fascinating to me. In this case, I was thinking about this when I was not falling asleep last night, because, under the Espionage Act, a normal defendant cannot challenge the classifications of the documents. I covered the Daniel Hale trial quite closely. Daniel Hale was in the U.S. Army. He was in the drone program. He was very disturbed by the, murder of people. I don't know how else you describe what he witnessed with the drones. And he gave information to a journalist, and he's in jail right now, Federal Prison Communications Management Unit. He's not walking around Miami. And so when he wanted the prosecution told the judge, do not allow him to challenge the classification, because a court cannot rule whether or not a document is classified or not. Only the executive branch can determine that. And even if a document's been wrongfully classified, and this came up in other Espionage Act trials, it doesn't matter, because the Espionage Act protects both properly and improperly classified information. With Donald Trump, it's kind of a bizarre thing, because as a former president, he was the executive branch. So I don't know what they will even do with claims if he tries to raise the claims that the documents were declassified. And it's not clear. A normal person cannot challenge the classification. I suppose that he could say as president this information was never classified, but, with Thomas Drake, which isn't true, but, you also are allowed to reclassify information. I mean, this is a story I don't think most people know. There's a journalist, James Bamford, he's still active, writing very interesting things about the Ukraine war, who in the late 70s, early 80s was working on the first book on the NSA, and the Carter administration, DOJ, gave him information under the Freedom of Information Act. And the NSA did not want him to have this information. And they said, it's illegal for you to have this. The DOJ was wrong. And so what are you talking about? The DOJ gave me this before. They spent 8 months reviewing the documents. What are you talking about, NSA? And then Ronald Reagan came into office, who ran on a platform of curtailing FOIA, and he put in an executive order that allowed them to reclassify information once it was released. So, I mean, this is a very strange case, and it is sort of a troubling situation, because I feel like whatever choice you make going forward here, there's sort of a potential, bad precedent. I don't think Donald Trump should get off scot-free. I think there's a huge problem in this country with just a dual-track system of justice. I think far from being a victim here, Donald Trump has gotten preferential treatment. I know many people who have been indicted under the Espionage Act. I've interviewed them. I've talked to them. I know them. I mean, they have compared their treatment by the government to that Donald Trump's gotten. And it's not even comparable. I mean, how are they rated by a...
Well, hold on. How are people, the Espionage Act, because typically it's been applied to people on the left, yes? Has it been evenly applied
to government? I mean, it's usually applied to government insiders who leak information. Usually they are more liked by the left traditionally.
Because they go against the status quo.
I don't know what their
right.
Yeah, I don't know what their personal politics are here. I don't want to say, because these are people who are within the NSA or the CIA. They can have some strange not strange, unusual, unorthodox political opinions.
Well, yeah, because
some of the whistleblowers.
Absolutely, because of what they know. I mean, they tend to not be partisan. They really tend not to be. That I'm trying to get at something here, though. What about? How are they? I've got a couple of minutes here. How are they typically treated?
Sure.
And compare and contrast what's happening with Trump.
For starters, I mean, the FBI doesn't try to. Are we going to commercial break?
Oh yeah. But you have a couple of minutes. But I want you to spell this out.
Okay.
Unless you can you wait a minute?
No. I can wait. Yes, the music is playing. Yes. I wasn't sure if I should talk over it or not.
No, that's fine. Because I want us to break down what's happening so we can understand the process. Chip Gibbons, Policy Director, Defending Rights and Dissent. Of course, Robert Patillo, Rainbow Push, WAOK Radio. His show is on every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. You need to know what's going on and how this Espionage Act, what it is, how it's applied. Because I've never seen it applied, Chip, to someone who was trying to protect corporate power. Someone who was trying to disrupt the status quo. Yes, I guess that's what I was getting at. I need to be more specific.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. No.
And I'm like, no, it seems like,
No, I understand what you're going.
Yeah.
I just,
No. Correct
CIA people turned whistleblowers. They have unorthodox views from every part of the political spectrum.
Correct me. I mean, because I think we need to put a precise point on it. Because I think we need to understand what we're looking at today. Because many people are just, I think you need to know what the former president is being charged with, what is being asked, and how we tend to, it just seems to me there are no rules here. Because too many of these people get access to these documents, Chip Gibbons, and they're able to walk away. And yet I have someone like Julian Assange whose life is on the line right now. He's ill. I've got Chelsea Manning, who was treated horrifically. I've got Ed Snowden, who can't come home. What is going on here? Robert Patillo, Chip Gibbons, stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. We're on StreamYard, so everybody loves crosstalk. But I mean, I thank you for that correction because I want that. Because it's, I'm just saying, people who protect corporate power are always protected. They can do whatever it is they want. They can run roughshod all over the country. But people, Ed Snowden, who says, wait a minute, you guys, you need to know that your civil liberties are threatened. Your rights are being threatened. Do you know how you're being surveilled? Chelsea Manning, do you know what's being done in your name? Boom. Julian Assange, do you know what's being done in your name? And these people, they can't buy a break. They can't buy a break. And I'm just trying to figure out, how does this work, Chip?
Well, it's really vindictive. I mean, if you leak national security information that exposes wrongdoing, they will come after you. Look at the vindictiveness with which they've come after Julian Assange. It's been over a decade since the New York Times and The Guardian published those documents. Exposing U.S. war crimes, exposing the State Department, and he's still sitting in Belmarsh, waiting to be extradited. He's been subjected to treatment that the United Nations has called torture. He's been subjected to treatment that the United Nations has called arbitrary detention. He was the subject of a CIA assassination plot. The number of dirty tricks they've pulled against him are just really very shocking. You have almost every branch of the U.S. intelligence involved in going after him. You've got the FBI, which is still pursuing them, even though he's awaiting extradition. We know just the other week they tried to interview his ghostwriter. The NSA, which tried to declare him, I forget what their legal language was, but which was going after him. They put him in the Manhunter database, which the other people in the Manhunting NSA database are people like Osama bin Laden. They treated him like he was a terrorist. The CIA, which plotted to kidnap and kill him. Army counterintelligence, which as early as 2007, before he's ever leaked anything about the U.S. government, says the way to destroy WikiLeaks is to go after and jail its sources. You know, they had a pretty clear blueprint of what to do, and they did it. Chelsea Manning, she was, per the United Nations, tortured by this country. Even after she had her sentence commuted, a lot of people think she was pardoned. She wasn't pardoned. She had her sentence commuted. She was still in prison when Barack Obama left office because he lessened her sentence, not set her free. And she had the longest sentence of anyone ever. And it's worth pointing out that had she been tried in a civilian court and not a military court, you know, the sentence she got would not have been possible because it was a military court-martial. The amount of time they could sentence her was much, much higher than they could in a civilian court, which is why I think Obama
1 minute
her sentence. Daniel Hale is in the communications management unit right now. He can't call anyone he wants on the phone. He can't write to anyone he wants. He has his communications restricted. His roommate in this unit was the so-called Russian merchant of death, who we did the prisoner swap for, right? So this is someone who is basically a pacifist who exposed war crimes, and they're in a special unit for terror.
30 seconds.
With an international arms dealer. The person in Massachusetts, I know a lot of people don't think he belongs in this category, and I kind of agree with him, but he's in pretrial detention. You know, usually they raid your house with a big SWAT team. They come and arrest you, and I don't support those types of displays.
10 seconds.
Power, but compare that to Donald Trump, who found out on a Thursday.
Hold that thought. I want you to make this case on the air. And Robert, you need to have him on your show.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show as we await the arrest, the fingerprinting, and the court appearance of former President Donald Trump. First time in our history that a president has been federally indicted. He could go to jail for the rest of his life. What do you think is going to happen here? And has he been handled with kid gloves? What do you think about that? We're talking with Robert Tillo from WAOK in Rainbow Push, and we are talking with Chip Gibbons, Policy Director for Fighting Rights and Dissent. Of course, they have been on the front lines fighting for Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning in particular, and helping us to understand just what happened with Ed Snowden, just what happened with Julian Assange, just what happened with Chelsea Manning, and why what they've done is so important, why we need these whistleblowers. But they're treated miserably. And you know, and the point that I made in the previous segment was, it seems to me that the Espionage Act is anyone who supports corporate power, they get off scot-free in America. But if you go up against corporate power and the status quo, boy, oh boy, you pay a heck of a price. What happened? Give us the difference between what's happening with Donald Trump, how he's being treated, and how these other persons who have been indicted and imprisoned under the Espionage Act. What's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the government made an attempt to get the documents back, right? They had this long out drawn affair where they tried to, first, I believe, voluntarily, then with a search warrant, retrieve the documents, and which Donald Trump just either blew off or, according to the indictment, encouraged people not to comply with or lie to or try to conceal things from. If you're a whistleblower, if you're Julian Assange and you're sitting somewhere with piles and piles of top secret documents, it's also worth pointing out that the documents Trump released are a higher classification level than anything Chelsea Manning put out there. If you're sitting with those documents, they're not going to play nice to you. They're going to come get them. The other thing is that and they kept calling it a raid. it was a search. I know people who have been indicted under the Espionage Act, and they've had their homes raided, right? Like, people come with SWAT teams and kick down the door. The lack of giving information to the media, the real, not sort of defaming, Trump defames himself. Why would you need to do that? Thomas Drake, NSA whistleblower, they did a press conference in his driveway while they were searching his house. And in Drake's case, they end up having to drop all of the Espionage Act charges against him. Look at
the
case of Reality Winner. Look at the case of the person in Massachusetts. They both were put in pretrial detention. I doubt Donald Trump is going to be. And to be clear, I don't think we should use pretrial detention. You should be detained if you're convicted. But that's not the way most of these people are treated. Look at Julian Assange, who's in horrible conditions in Belmarsh in the United Kingdom, awaiting extradition. And then look at people who have been convicted. Daniel Hale, who was a drone whistleblower and anti-war activist. He's in a communications management unit in federal prison right now. Communications management units were created for quote-unquote terrorists. His cellmate for a long time was an international arms dealer. This is someone who is pretty much a pacifist who doesn't believe in taking life, and we have him, walled off with some of the most violent people. He's unable to write a letter to anyone he chooses to, unable to call without the FBI listening in. I don't think we're going to give that treatment to Trump. And if you are indicted under the Espionage Act, they don't inform you on a Thursday and tell you to come turn yourself in on a Tuesday, right? That's the most jarring thing to me, is A, Trump got to announce this, not the DOJ, and he had 3 business days, and 2 weekend days, 5 days before he had to come in and be arraigned. They're going to pull you off the street, probably with big guns, and come pull you out of your house if you're indicted under the Espionage Act. You don't get this sort of special treatment. And that's the thing that's sort of really disturbing by this, is Trump continues to sort of argue that he's the victim here, or that he's been treated so poorly. And the reality is that he has been given preferential treatment compared to other Espionage Act defendants. And people can say, oh, what about Hillary Clinton's emails? Oh, what about Joe Biden's boxes in the garage? But, Trump probably could have gotten that treatment if he had just given the documents back. Instead, he continued to keep them, and he concealed and lied about it to federal prosecutors, to federal investigators, until he was practically daring them to indict him. And I don't, in that sense, it's not comparable with these other cases like the Assange, like the Manning case, like the Drake case. The one thing I will say is that, the Espionage Act part of the charges are potentially troubling because the Espionage Act is troubling. I don't really think we should be using the Espionage Act as written, even against Donald Trump. And it's an incredibly broad law, but in terms of cases that have the impact to threaten press freedom, threaten civil liberties, this really isn't one of them, because his conduct is not in the public interest. He's not a whistleblower. He's not a journalist. He's somebody who, for I don't know what reason, self-aggrandizement, took documents he wasn't supposed to have, stored them improperly at his resort, and continued to show them to people. It's such a different type of case, but it doesn't suddenly make the Espionage Act good. I don't think people realize just how broad the Espionage Act is. The Espionage Act is written in such a broad way that pretty much anyone probably could violate it in their day-to-day life, right? You're saying, how would I do that? It doesn't just apply to government insiders. It doesn't just apply to information that's never been published. If you read the newspaper and a story is based on classified information, and you tell someone about that story, you summarize what it says, you tweet about it, you've technically broken the Espionage Act, although it's never been applied that way and won't. But it's an incredibly broad law from 1917. It predates the classification system. It predates the modern understanding of the First Amendment, and it should be fundamentally reformed or outright repealed. But that doesn't also mean that Trump did nothing wrong with these documents.
Yeah, my question is,
that's not that should go after him.
No question. I just want to know, just given this is not someone who is not an insider. When I look at former President Trump, this is someone who they were pushing to run for president 40 years ago, when he was a local realtor, real estate developer in New York. I'm like, wait a minute, why is he on Oprah? Why is she asking him if he's going to run for president? What? He builds buildings in New York. What's that? This is someone who worked with Roy Cohn. I mean, this is not someone who's just some unknown entity who doesn't have casinos where he knows everybody's stuff. There's something that's, before I go to the callers, I mean, just, there's something strange about this, Robert Patillo. Just, I don't know. Something, it's above my pay grade for sure.
Well, as I think most of us have said, this is a situation where we have to know how to walk and chew gum at the same time. The Espionage Act, if you think the Espionage Act is bad, now go back to World War I, when it was first passed. They were jailing Hollywood producers for making movies that questioned the war effort. They were jailing journalists for writing articles that were unflattering. This has always been part of the, since its inception, has been part of the way that the American deep state is used to silence people. So that can be true, but then at the same time it can be true that President Trump is probably going to go to jail for all the crimes he committed. And even if you take the Espionage Act counts out, you still have the obstruction of justice. You still have the willful misconduct. You still have lying to federal investigators. Any of those charges could put Donald Trump in jail for the remainder of his natural life. And for the conservatives who are defending this, whataboutism does not help you in a courtroom. So if the only defense is, well, what about Hillary, and what about Obama, and what about Biden, and what about Mike Pence, the defense should be, my client did not do the things he's accused of. Here's the evidence that he did not do the things that he's accused of. If he did do the things he's accused of, here are the justifications legally for why that is proper conduct. You can't what about your way out of a federal indictment, and I think that is one of the issues President Trump is going to be running into very quickly. That in front of a federal judge, your gift of gab doesn't get you as far as you may think, and at some time it's time to pay the piper.
Dynamo Dave, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Hello.
Dynamo Dave, hey honey, what's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Hey, how is the sunshine of Chicago doing?
Oh, my sweet, I'm doing well. Always great to hear from you.
Yeah, got another great panel today. I'm learning so much. Hey, a few points. First of all, do you remember back in the day when Clinton was running for president, when he was president, there was people on the right wing were saying, hey, because he went to Russia or the Soviet Union back in his college years, that he was like a Manchurian candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Trump, who, and then Trump, who had a beauty pageant in Russia or something like that, and claimed that he became fast friends with Putin back then. We don't know if that actually occurred, but he bragged about that he was friends. And how do we know that actually Trump? Hold on your seats. Isn't actually a Manchurian candidate? So confusion in our nation, because that'd be like the ultimate thing is to have somebody who's being paid off by Russia or something to affect our politics. And he is, hopefully the corporatocracy media is not going to put a microphone in front of his face after every hearing or whatever on his case, because he is like a fire hose. He's a master of communication. And people, some people out there buy everything he says hook, line, and sinker, even though he says one thing one day and says the opposite the next day. He is, the political cult leader.
Well, I mean, what do you say? Do you think he's a political cult leader, Chip Gibbons?
I mean, he's got.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. You want to complete your thought? No,
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me. Go ahead.
No, but I am. So why do you think he's a political cult leader?
Well, if you look at, cult leaders, there's 12 to 14 qualities. You can look it up.
Mm-hmm.
But, charismatic, they don't, they get offensive if anybody goes against their line of thought. They make them the enemy. And he was always, came up with a name for everybody that opposes him in an election or whatever. He, does a name calling thing. So there's other qualities. And, of course, there's these people who follow him just like a cult.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what he does. He said it way back when he was running. He said, I could shoot somebody on whatever street in New York, and people would, nothing would be done about it as far as his followers. He was well aware of his political, his charismatic, his following that's out there.
Well, I think that's always...
And like most cult leaders self-destruct, and he's in that process of self-destructing.
Well, yeah,
it kind of started on January 6th.
Well, that's why they say absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why you have to be very careful when you have power or when you've been empowered. My father said, when you have power, try not to use it, because if you use it, you will abuse it. And if you use it, you could abuse it. And if you abuse it, you will lose it. And so I think that I see a fair amount of that kind of behavior on the right and the left. And so you always have to be very, very wary of power and of how it's used. But I hear you, Dynamo Dave, but I want the panel to speak to, many people have said that he's a cult leader. And look, I just want to know, where's all of this going today, Chip Gibbons? I mean, do you think that this will prompt our thinking about the Chelsea Mannings, about Julian Assange? People are calling for Julian Assange to be released. In the American government, I'm afraid for him to come here because some of the leading figures in our political life have called for some not too nice things to happen to him should he come here. I don't know if he's safe. Chip?
He's definitely not safe in this country, and I think it's the worst possible outcome is for him to come here. And it's worth pointing out that on the same day we learned about this indictment from Donald Trump, a UK High Court judge rejected his appeal in his
Collars off.
In the extradition case, bringing him closer to extradition. So Assange he still has, I believe, one last legal remedy in the UK, but he is getting close to the critical point in his case. Is Donald Trump a cult leader? I don't know the answer to that. I certainly know his followers believe anything he says, and oftentimes believes outlandish conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like he's capable of ever doing anything wrong in their minds. That certainly sounds a bit like a cult leader, but I will leave that diagnosis to someone else.
Well, I think it's a sad thing that today in the United States of America, that Julian Assange that you and I both are saying that, or believing that he would not be safe here. That to me is quite damning, Chip. What does that say about what's happening?
We know the CIA talked about killing him. We know they talked about kidnapping him. That was Trump's CIA. And then we know Hillary Clinton joked about killing with a drone strike. The people of both parties have talked about doing really horrible things to him.
About killing him.
You have a number.
Wait. Chip,
of killing him, killing him, yes.
What?
Yes.
How do you do? I'm just saying, for me, I have to just stop right there, because I'm from the nonviolent track of social change. So when you start talking about killing somebody, you lose me. Although I've been supportive of him and what WikiLeaks has told us, quite frankly, you lose me when you start talking about killing somebody, Chip. You lose me.
Well, the CIA is not from the nonviolent track of social change. They're from the very violent track, and I don't know if you'll call what they advocate social change or social regression, but no, and that's part of the problem. Look at what he's exposed. He's exposed war crimes. He's exposed, people being killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the response of a lot of people who support those policies is, oh, let's kill him too. I mean, it really speaks to the morality of, you want to call it the military-industrial complex, the deep state, national security state, of this sort of, state apparatus that manages these wars, that spies on people, when their response to being shown for engaging in murder is to try to murder the person who exposed them.
Well, Marquet says this. Robert. Like I have said, I thought they had way more than this on Trump. Yes, these charges are serious, but where are the other more sinister allegations? You are an officer of the court, and I heard Chris Christie in the CNN town hall yesterday say, well, this is a speaking indictment. So Jack Smith put a lot more detail in there than is normally put in there. He said, but maybe a third of what they found on President Trump, former President Trump, is in this document. What do you see? Do you think a lot has been held back?
Absolutely. I think that what Jack Smith did is understand that, in the words of Omar from The Wire, if you come for the king, you best not miss. And if you're going to be prosecuting President Trump, you have to come with only the strongest counts. Because even if there are some 50-50 or 60-40 counts that you probably could get a conviction on, you don't want that to weaken the overall case. So Jack Smith, if you notice, he narrowed it down to the things that he had the most compelling and dispositive evidence on. President Trump says to his lawyers, can't we just get rid of the evidence? Well, that seems like obstruction of justice to me. When you're saying, well, we have pictures of these documents surrounding your toilet, or sitting in a ballroom, or laying out on the floor, etc. Or Espionage Act. Is this a secure place where these things are supposed to be at? No. Okay, well, that's pretty simple. That is a violation of that law. And I think that if you look throughout the indictment, that is exactly what Jack Smith was doing. And then also writing it very much in plain language, not getting too legalese to an extent, and putting it in a place where, as you would say, down where the goats can get it, where people can understand exactly what the president is being charged with, and exactly why it's necessary to prosecute, particularly when it comes to the national security information on our nuclear secrets and on military operations. I think even the most fervent conservative would say that that's an improper thing and an illegal thing to be done, even by President Trump. And we're seeing this now more with Republican candidates. And Nikki Haley had some very sharp criticism from President Trump yesterday. Chris Christie, of course, has been going hammer and nail on President Trump since he announced. And we're seeing more and more Republicans fleeing Trump like a sinking ship and realizing that their political future can no longer be tied to somebody who's more than likely going to prison.
Well, do you see a way for him? Moving forward. Or should I say, not even moving forward, moving through this. Where are these cases with Chelsea Manning? Where are these cases, with people who've been charged with the Espionage Act, like former President Trump? What's going to happen with Julian Assange? What's going to happen with Chelsea Manning? What about Ed Snowden? Will he ever come back to the United States? Chip Gibbons.
Snowden can't come back to the United States unless he receives some sort of pardon or the Espionage Act charges against him are dropped. And, people always ask, well, why is he in Russia? And the NSA deputy director at the time, Chris Inglis, said very explicitly that the NSA didn't believe Snowden ever intended to go to Russia, that his intent was to go to Latin America. And he had a safe travel pass from Ecuador, and he was en route to Cuba, and the Obama administration pressured Ecuador into withdrawing his safe travel pass. They pressured Cuba into not allowing him to come through their airspace on a commercial plane, and they canceled his passport. So I know the why is Ed Snowden in Russia thing comes up a lot, but it's worth pointing out that even the NSA concedes Edward Snowden is not in Russia by his own choice, that his intent was to go to Latin America. We don't know where. I think most people suspect Ecuador. And that when they thought he was on the plane of Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, we forced the plane down on European airspace. Julian Assange is in Belmarsh prison, one of the harshest prisons in the United Kingdom. I was going to say Her Majesty's Prison, Belmarsh, but it's His Majesty's Prison now. I cannot imagine having a prison named after me, but I guess if you're the King or Queen of England, maybe it's fitting. I don't know. Chelsea Manning, she's out and free. I'm very glad for that. But, Daniel Hale, he's sitting in a communications management unit, reality winner. She's still under court-ordered supervision. Even when you beat the government in these cases, you still sort of lose. Thomas Drake was the first Espionage Act case brought during the Obama administration, the first one brought since, the 80s. And the government case completely fell apart. They had to pull the Espionage Act charges. He went bankrupt defending himself. So even when you win against the government with the Espionage Act, you still lose, unless, of course, your name is Donald Trump, and I don't know what will happen to him. He might be going bankrupt either way. I don't know. His finances don't seem too solid to me.
Well, but people like that can get money over and over and over again. He's gotten billions in long-term banks.
I know.
People like that don't go broke. So I've got the last 60 seconds. They belong to you. What do you want us to know?
Yeah, I think it's really important to be clear that Donald Trump is, not a spy. The Espionage Act is not just reserved for spies, but he's also not a whistleblower or a journalist like the other people. He took these documents for his own self-aggrandizement. He was treated pretty preferentially, and he, probably could have gotten away with it if he would just be cooperative. That being said, I don't think that the Espionage Act is a good law, and I think we need to fundamentally look in reforming or repealing it, and we shouldn't let this one Trump case sort of determine our whole outlook under the Espionage Act. There are plenty of other laws he can be indicted with. We see the obstruction counts. And also, I still think the most serious criminal charges against him are going to come in Georgia if they bring those charges, where he tried to commit election fraud, which is, in my opinion, probably the most serious thing he did.
Last 30 seconds belong to you, Robert Patillo.
I think we should look out today for exactly what President Trump is taking in and how his demeanor is, and whether or not he's going to be willing to take this plea deal. I think that might be his only way of avoiding prison.
Let's stay tuned, everybody. As Reverend Dr. Uri yesterday said, pull out your popcorn. Boy, as Betty Davis said, hold on, everybody, strap in. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But you know what? One day, in some way, we're going to become a more perfect union. We can do that. But we're all going to have to get involved. I love you, everybody. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow, Lord willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. Alex, thank you for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day. Are my gentlemen still there?
Yes.
Well, I wanted to say